heart light because she wanted to surprise her husband, Otieno. She thought she'd find him resting on the couch after a long day. But as she reached the door, she froze. From inside came loud laughter, two voices she knew too well. She pushed the door slightly open and saw Otieno sitting close to her younger sister, Zawadi. On the table sat a bottle of champagne, two glasses already half empty. They raised their glasses high, clinking them together, smiling in a way that cut through Akieng's soul. To Akieng's freedom, Zawadi giggled. To our new beginning, Otieno added, laughing louder. Akieng's chest tightened. Her hands trembled as she realized they were celebrating her pain, her marriage ending, while she was still in the picture. The man she trusted, and the sister she loved, had turned her into a joke. She wanted to scream, to walk in and throw the glasses to the ground. But something inside her told her to stay calm. Slowly, she took out her phone and pressed record. Every cruel laugh, every careless word, every betrayal. They would not escape the truth now. Her heart shattered, but her mind grew sharper. She stepped back quietly, swallowing her tears. At that moment, Akieng knew she was not the broken one, they were. And soon, the world would see exactly who Otieno and Zawadi really were. Sometimes silence speaks louder than screams. And Akieng chose silence, with evidence. Namirem had always been the quiet strength in her home. She once dreamed of being a teacher, but when her husband Kato wanted to start his business, she put her dreams aside. Every coin she saved, every extra shift she worked, went into supporting him. She believed in him even when no one else did. She told herself, one day, all this sacrifice will be worth it. That evening, she finished her errands earlier than planned. With a smile, she decided to surprise Kato at home. Maybe they could share dinner together. Maybe he'd even thank her for standing by him all these years. But as she opened the door slowly, her heart dropped. There, at the dining table, sat Kato and her younger sister Lorna. A chilled bottle of champagne glistened under the light, their glasses filled high. They were laughing, too loudly, too comfortably. To the blind wife, Kato sneered, raising his glass. She doesn't even see what's in front of her, Lorna added, chuckling. Namirem felt her knees weaken. Blind wife. The words stabbed her deeper than any knife. This was the man she gave up everything for, and the sister she trusted most. They weren't just betraying her, they were mocking her. Her hands shook, but she pulled out her phone, pressing record. Every giggle, every cruel word was captured. She stood in the shadows, her tears falling silently, but her resolve growing stronger. She realized in that painful moment that she had been more than a wife, more than a sister. She had been their foundation. And they were laughing at the very woman who carried them. Namirem did not walk in, she did not scream. She quietly stepped back, phone still recording. She knew evidence was stronger than anger. She knew their masks would soon be ripped off. That night, lying alone in her bed, she replayed the video, her heart shattering with every second. But behind the pain, a flame of strength began to rise. They thought she was blind, but soon the whole world would see who the real fools were. Sometimes betrayal doesn't break you, it awakens you. And Namirem, the woman they mocked, was no longer blind. She was wide awake and ready. Ifeoma's meeting had been cancelled at the last minute, and instead of sitting in traffic, she thought of hurrying home to surprise her husband, Chaik. She imagined finding him on the couch, maybe tired from work, and they could share an early dinner together. With a smile on her face, she opened the door, only for her whole world to stop. Loud music filled the living room. In the middle of it, Chaik was holding her younger sister, Nina, their bodies moving close as they laughed. On the table, a bottle of champagne stood open, bubbles spilling into glasses. Just as Ifeoma's heart began to crack, she heard Nina whisper, "Finally, we can start over." Chaik clinked his glass with hers and said, "To our freedom." Ifeoma froze in the doorway, her breath caught in her chest. Her husband, the man she had trusted with everything, and her sister, her own blood, were celebrating a new life built on her pain. She wanted to scream, to run in and break everything in sight, but her feet refused to move. Instead, her hands slowly reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. With trembling fingers, she pressed record. Every laugh, every whisper, Every shameless toast was captured. She stayed hidden, her tears blurring her vision, but she forced herself to hold steady. They thought she was gone, that she would never know. But now the truth was hers. That night, Ifioma sat alone in the dark, the phone clutched in her hand. She replayed the video, each second cutting deeper into her heart. She sobbed until her body felt empty, but somewhere inside that emptiness, strength began to grow. She realized that her life didn't end in that living room. No, her new life began there. They had chosen betrayal, but she would choose power. They wanted to dance on her pain, but she would rise and make their celebration their downfall. Her tears dried, leaving only resolve. Ifioma whispered to herself, "They think I'm broken. They don't know I'm just getting started." Efua came home earlier than usual, carrying a bag of groceries. She thought she would find her husband, Kojo, relaxing after work, but when she stepped quietly into the house, she heard laughter coming from the dining room. Curious, she walked closer, and what she saw made her heart drop. Kojo was dressed in his best suit, the one he usually saved for special occasions. Across from him sat her younger sister, Abina, smiling like she owned the world. On the table between them, a chilled bottle of champagne sparkled under the light, their glasses raised high. "To the divorce papers," Kojo said proudly, clinking his glass. "To our new life together," Abina added, her laughter sharp as a knife. Efua's whole body trembled. Her husband and her own sister were toasting to her pain, celebrating the end of her marriage as if it was a party. She wanted to storm in, to scream and cry, but instead she froze. Slowly, with shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and pressed record. Every laugh, every word, every toast was captured. She stood there quietly, her tears sliding down her cheeks, but her silence was louder than any scream. After a few minutes, she turned and walked out, her heart breaking but her mind racing. That night, alone in her room, Efua uploaded the video to social media. She wrote just one sentence. "Family doesn't always mean love." It's poured in from strangers around the world, some in shock, some sending her love, others warning her to stand strong. People couldn't believe the betrayal they had witnessed. By morning, the video had gone viral. Kojo and Abina's faces were everywhere, their shameless toast exposed to thousands. Efua didn't even need to say more. The world had already judged them. Her pain was deep, but sharing the truth gave her strength. They thought they could celebrate her ending, but instead, Efua's silence, her tears, and her courage turned into power. They raised their glasses to her divorce. But the world raised theirs to her strength. She had always believed her husband Bonda was loyal. She trusted him without question, never once suspecting his heart could belong anywhere else. For years, she defended him to friends who doubted, telling them, "Bonda is different." To her, he was the man she could lean on, the man she built her life with. That afternoon, she finished work earlier than planned. She carried a small smile, thinking maybe she could surprise Bonda with his favorite meal. But when she unlocked the door and stepped inside, the sound of laughter and music greeted her. Confused, she walked slowly toward the living room, and her heart stopped. The room was decorated with balloons and ribbons. On the table sat a cake with bold, cruel letters written in icing. "Goodbye, Chilishi." Bonda stood there with a champagne glass in his hand, and beside him, smiling just as wide, was her younger sister Moila. "To new beginnings." Moila cheered, raising her glass. "To freedom at last," Bonda replied, clinking his glass against hers. Chilesh's body shook as if the ground beneath her had vanished. The man she loved and the sister she trusted were celebrating her end, like her pain was entertainment. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't step forward. Instead, with trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and pressed record. Every cruel laugh, every toast, every glimpse of that cake was captured. She stood there silently, her heart breaking, but her mind sharper than ever. If they wanted to play games with her life, she would show the world the truth. Later that night, Chilishi sat alone in her bedroom, staring at the video. The pain was unbearable, yet the evidence in her hand gave her strength. She knew people would doubt her if she only told them, but once they saw this, no one could deny her betrayal. She uploaded the video with a simple caption: "Sometimes the ones you feed are the ones who cut you deepest." By morning it had gone viral. Thousands of people watched, their hearts breaking for her. Strangers sent her messages of support, and the names Bonda and Moila became symbols of betrayal. They thought the cake was her ending, but instead it was the beginning of her rising. Shalesh's trust had been broken, but her voice, her truth, and her courage were louder than their celebration. Amina had always lived a simple life. She wasn't flashy, she didn't chase parties or fancy outings. She found joy in small things, in her garden, in cooking meals, in working hard for her family. She believed her husband Hakim loved her for that simplicity. She believed her sister Safia respected her for it too. But one evening she discovered how wrong she was. She came home earlier than expected, her footsteps light as she entered the house. From the dining room she heard laughter, two voices she knew too well. Curious but cautious, she stepped closer, and the sight that met her eyes froze her in place. Hakim and Safia sat at the table, wine bottles scattered between them, glasses raised high. They leaned into each other, laughing in ways that made Amina's chest tighten. "To life without her boring ways," Hakim chuckled, clinking his glass. Safia giggled, replying, "Finally, you'll have a real partner, not someone stuck in the shadows." The words stabbed through Amina's heart. Boring. Shadows. They were mocking the very woman who sacrificed her dreams to keep a home standing. She felt her throat burn with the scream she wanted to release, but instead she stayed quiet. Slowly, she pulled out her phone and snapped a clear photo of the scene, their glasses raised, their betrayal plain as day. Her hands trembled, but she refused to give them the power of seeing her break. Without a word, she turned and walked out of the house, her tears falling silently in the night. That evening, lying in her bed, she stared at the photo again and again. Each time it hurt, but each time her resolve grew stronger. They thought they were celebrating her end, but she knew it was the beginning of something new. She whispered to herself, "They will not define me. They will not break me." Amina began planning her next steps. She would protect what was hers, she would rebuild her life, and she would do it without begging for their love. The photo in her phone wasn't just proof of betrayal, it was proof of her awakening. Hakim and Safia laughed over wine, but Amina knew the last laugh would be hers. They raised a glass to her boring life. She raised her strength to a future where she stood tall, unbroken, and unstoppable. Nima had always been the kind of woman who believed in family above everything. She worked hard, supported her husband Juma in every way she could, and trusted her younger sister Rahima with all her secrets. To her, loyalty was sacred. But one evening she came home earlier than expected, and her world turned upside down. As she stepped into the house, she heard loud laughter echoing from the living room. It was Juma's voice, deep and careless, mixed with Rahima's lighter giggle. Nima's heart began to race. She moved quietly, stopping just behind the curtain, and what she saw made her breath catch. On the table sat a bottle of expensive champagne, one she knew Juma would never buy for her. The glasses were filled, and balloons were scattered across the room. Juma leaned toward Rahima, clinking his glass against hers. "To freedom from Nima," he said with a smirk. Rahima laughed loudly, replying, "She'll survive alone. She's good at struggling." The words sliced through Nima's heart like a blade. They weren't just betraying her. They were mocking her strength, laughing at the sacrifices she had made for both of them. Her hands trembled, but she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Hidden behind the curtain, she pressed record. Every cruel laugh, every insult, every shameless toast was captured. She wanted to run out and scream, to ask why her love and loyalty had been turned into a joke. But instead she stayed silent. Her silence became her shield, her camera her weapon. After a few minutes, she turned away, her tears falling quietly. That night, alone in her bedroom, Nima cried until her chest ached. Then she wiped her face, opened her laptop, and made a decision. If Juma thought she would survive alone, then she would do more than survive, she would rise. She logged into her bank account, deleted the joint one she shared with him, and opened a new one in her own name. For the first time in years she chose herself. Her tears had been heavy, but they no longer controlled her. she whispered to herself. They think I'm weak. They will see my strength. Juma and Rahima raised their glasses to her downfall, but Nima was already raising her courage to a new beginning. They thought they had broken her, but they had only awakened her. Thandi had always believed her home was safe, her marriage steady, and her family loyal. She worked long hours but never complained, because she wanted to give her husband Themba the best. She trusted her younger sister Naledi, often welcoming her into their home like her own child. But one evening, everything she believed in was shattered. She came home earlier than usual, her footsteps light as she walked through the door. From the living room, loud music blasted, the kind usually reserved for parties. Confused, Thandi moved closer, and what she saw nearly stopped her heart. The table was covered with wrapped gifts, shiny ribbons, and an expensive cake. Her husband Themba stood there with a drink in his hand, smiling wide. Beside him was Naledi, holding a glass of champagne, her face glowing with laughter. Finally free, Themba shouted, raising his glass high. Naledi giggled and echoed, to us, to our future. Thandi's breath caught in her throat. The man she had trusted with her heart and the sister she had loved since childhood were celebrating her downfall as if it were a holiday. She wanted to run in, to throw the glasses to the ground, to demand answers. But instead, her instincts told her to stay still. Quietly, she slipped her phone from her bag. With trembling hands, she began snapping photos, each one capturing the gifts, the champagne, the smiles, the betrayal written across their faces. Every picture became a piece of truth, a weapon she knew she would one day use. Her heart felt like it was being torn apart, yet her mind grew sharper with every click of the camera. They thought she was powerless, but she was already gathering strength. Later that night, Thandi sat alone in her bedroom, her phone glowing in her hands. She looked through the photos again and again, each one cutting her deeper but also reminding her of what she now carried, proof. Her tears fell, but they didn't last long. She wiped them away and whispered, "This is not the end of me. This is the end of them." They had celebrated her supposed weakness, but they had underestimated her. Thandi knew that in the right moment, those photos would break the lies they had built. Themba and Naledi raised their glasses to her downfall, but Thandi quietly raised her strength to her comeback. And when the time came, the world would see the truth. Mariama had always been proud of the home she built. She worked hard, cooked with love, and cared for her husband Idris with all her heart. Her younger sister Ye often visited, and Mariama trusted her completely. To Mariama, family was everything. But one evening, when she returned home earlier than expected, everything she believed in collapsed. As she stepped into the house, she heard laughter floating from the living room. Curious, she walked closer, her smile fading with every step. What she saw froze her in place. Idris sat comfortably on the couch, a glass of champagne in hand. Beside him was Ye, her head thrown back in laughter, her own glass raised high. On the table between them stood the half-empty bottle, along with plates of food Mariama had cooked earlier. To the end of Mariama, Idris cheered, clinking his glass against Ye's. "She can't even cook properly," Ye added, giggling. "At least now you'll eat real food." Their laughter echoed like knives in Mariama's chest. The man she loved and the sister she trusted were mocking her meals, her care, her very existence. Her hands shook, but instead of walking in and breaking down, she slowly pulled out her phone. With trembling fingers, she pressed record. Every cruel word, every insult, every toast was captured. She stood there quietly, tears sliding down her cheeks, but her silence was powerful. Without saying a word, she turned and walked away. That night, Mariama replayed the video again and again, each second more painful than the last. But she knew what she had to do. They thought she would suffer in silence, but she was done protecting people who stabbed her in the back. At the next family gathering, with relatives on both sides present, Mariama stood up. Her voice didn't shake. She played the video in front of everyone, letting Idris and Ye's laughter fill the room. The air grew heavy, and one by one, jaws dropped. Faces turned pale. No one could deny the truth now. It was all there, captured in her phone. Idris stammered, Ye tried to defend herself, but the damage was done. The shame belonged to them. Mariama had walked in on betrayal, but she walked out with evidence. They celebrated her end, but she turned their toast into their downfall. And in that moment Mariama realized, sometimes the quietest voice carries the loudest truth. Rutendo wasn't supposed to be home that early. She had finished her errands quicker than expected and thought of surprising her husband, Tendai. But as she opened the door, she froze. From the living room came laughter, clinking glasses, and the sound of a cork popping. She peeked inside and her heart dropped. Tendai, the man she had built her life with, stood there smiling with a champagne glass in his hand. Beside him was her younger sister Toriro, holding another glass, grinning like she had won a prize. On the table lay the divorce papers, already signed. "To freedom," Tendai said proudly, raising his glass. "To us," Toriro added, giggling as their glasses touched. Rutendo's hands shook, her heart breaking into pieces. But instead of walking in, she pulled out her phone and pressed record. Every laugh, every cruel word, every shameless toast was captured. She stayed silent, her tears rolling down, then slipped away unnoticed. Days later, the family gathered for a big dinner. Everyone expected Rutendo to look broken, but she walked in tall, dressed with quiet power. When the chatter grew, she placed her phone on the table and pressed play. The video filled the room, Tendai and Toriro laughing, celebrating, mocking her. The room went silent, forks froze in midair, faces turned pale. Tendai buried his face in his hands, tears streaming. Toriro couldn't lift her head. Rutendo looked around the table, her voice steady. This is what loyalty meant to them. In that moment, she wasn't the abandoned wife. She was the woman who turned betrayal into strength. They thought they had ended her. Instead,